I'm Pat Torres. Welcome to The Story. We're just a couple of years away now from the start of construction on a replacement for the I-5 bridge, at least according to the most optimistic timeline. And it turns out those next couple of years might also be the last time you can cross the river for free. 2 years from now, you're probably going to start seeing tolling cameras overhead as you drive across on the current bridges. And then a few months after that, they're going to start seeing you. That's tonight's big story. Ah, yes, tolling. Just to get us all on the same page, we're talking about the new bridges across the Columbia River between Portland and Vancouver on I-5. The project is huge. It's going to cost an estimated $6 billion. Now, we've known for a while that tolls are going to be used to cover at least $1 billion of that. And the project team confirmed earlier this year that they plan to start collecting those tolls on the current twin bridges while the new ones are being built. But there's a lot we still don't know, like exactly when the tolls will start or how much they're going to cost. The project's executive steering group had a meeting earlier this week where a few new details started to trickle out. The Interstate Bridge replacement is planned to start construction in late 2025 or early 26, and then wrap up about 8 years later in 2033 or 34. But a whole bunch of things have to go right over the next 2 years for the project to stay on schedule. One of those things is landing billions of dollars from the federal government. Another is getting through the environmental review process and getting a green light from regulators. And, oh yeah, it'll have to win approval from the U.S. Coast Guard, which so far has been kind of skeptical about whether the current design is high enough for big river traffic to get underneath. But let's get back to tolling. Like everything else, the tolling plan is still tentative at this point. But while the plan is not set in stone, it's a good bet that there will be tolls.
We know that tolling is never a popular issue, but everyone realizes that it is a necessary step in the funding package to get this done.
Much of Wednesday's meeting with the project team was under a PowerPoint presentation, and they laid out what they hope will be the timeline for tolling. The process will really fire up in mid or late 2025 when the Oregon and Washington Transportation Commissions get together to make a final decision about how much the tolls will cost. They'll also decide policy issues, things like exceptions, discounts, and hours of operation. Tolling will begin about 6 to 8 months after the commission makes their decision, most likely in the spring of 2026, according to the project team. Tolling gantries, those are the overhead structures across the freeway that hold the tolling cameras. Well, those are expected to be installed on the current I-5 bridges starting in late 2025. And just like with the planned tolls on I-5 and 205 in the Portland area, you won't have to stop at a toll booth. The cameras will detect a transponder on your car, or they'll take a picture of your license plate as you go by, and then you'll get a bill. And speaking of those other tolling projects, the Interstate Bridge team has decided that Oregon alone should handle the toll collection on the bridge on behalf of both states. That's because they want to make sure that drivers have a seamless experience with a consistent payment method across the Portland region. Those other Portland freeway tolling projects, by the way, have been controversial, and Oregon Governor Tina Kotek hit the pause button earlier this year, putting a moratorium on new tolls in the state through the end of 2025. Now, the order had a specific exception for the I-5 bridge, but the project planners say that doesn't matter anyway. They're not going to start tolling until sometime in 2026. The big question is how much the bridge tolls are going to cost. And while we still don't know exactly, we do have a pretty good idea now. Administrator Greg Johnson told KGW earlier this year his team was using a placeholder estimate of $2 to $4 each way for early planning work. At Wednesday's meeting, the team said it had completed a more in-depth traffic and tolling study this year that looked at 7 different toll rate scenarios and narrowed the range down a little bit more.
The rates that they studied were in the $1.50 to $3.55.
I don't know how you come up with $3.55, but they're all variable rate schedules, which means the toll amounts change depending on the time of day. Higher prices at rush hour, lower prices during off hours. Right now, that's the plan for toll pricing on other Portland area freeways as well. Time of day pricing instead of basing it on real-time traffic conditions. That came up on KGW Straight Talk this week.
So this is what we're calling a variable rate tolling, meaning we say know before you go. So you'll know before you head out to the bridge what the toll is going to be. It's going to be different during congested periods versus off-peak, middle of the night conditions. But you won't be surprised that you won't have to go under the bridge and then realize what the toll price is. So that'll help people plan their trips.
Some of the scenarios would look at hiking the tolls by another 2.15% each year, and some of them also considered adding a low-income toll program. Now, there's another more detailed study still to come, and the final decision rests with the state transportation commissions, which could wind up setting completely different rates. But the team says the work so far seems to support that $1.50 to $3.55 range.
So as we look at all these different components, our real goal was to make sure that we had enough net revenue necessary to help complement and fill out the finance plan. And we did confirm that we believe that we can get that net revenue. And I think we were targeting $1.24 billion.
So there you have it. There's a lot left to figure out in the next 2 years, but at least now you know roughly how much longer you can enjoy the free crossings and what it could cost you once the tolls go live. Finally, I can just sense some of you thinking, fine, they start tolling I-5, I'm going to cross the 205 for free. Well, yes, but actually probably no. We don't have a clear answer on the timing yet, but it's a pretty good bet that 205 tolling will begin shortly after I-5 tolling. If you'd like to learn more about where the bridge process stands right now, stick around for Straight Talk with Laurel Porter. It's coming up next, right after the story. Now to a story that's sure to raise some blood pressure out there. You may have seen some headlines this week regarding the Oregon Department of Transportation warning of cutbacks to plowing and other winter maintenance in the months ahead. The reason? That falling gas tax revenue, which has led to staff shortages and other logistical issues.
We're going to see a lessening in the amount of winter maintenance that we can take care of if we get hit by a winter storm this coming winter. We're not going to be able to plow the roads as frequently as we did in the past. We're not going to be able to treat the roads as much as we have in the past with the salt and with the de-icer and the sand as much as we have in the past. People are going to notice a difference in this if we get hit by a winter storm. It's not going to be the same. It's going to be different.
Doesn't that sound like fun? Remember that mess on the roads during that historic snow back in this last February? Well, MoDOT's basically saying their response back then could be the new normal we have to live with. Don't look for them on the side streets, by the way. Their focus is going to be on major roads, I-5, I-205, I-84, 405, and the Sunset Highway. But Don Hamilton there says you're likely already seeing some of the milder impacts of their budget woes, things like overgrown landscaping and graffiti. The graffiti is especially apparent here in the metro area. The gas tax is a major part of ODOT's budget, and while those revenues are not exactly in a steep nosedive at the moment, they are falling. ODOT's banging the drum right now to warn that something needs to change.
You know, the gas tax has served us pretty well for the last century, as long as we've been able to rely on the internal combustion engine. It's done very, very well for us for a long time, but conditions are changing out there with the rise of the electric vehicles, with the greater efficiency of the internal combustion engine. So things are certainly changing out there in that world, and we've got to start to try to find some new mechanisms for funding our roads. This is about the maintenance and the security of our roads out there. It's really about the basic security of taking care of the public. This is what we're looking at out there. It is not small. We're not going to be able to look at this with little tweaks in the system. We've got to try to find some major changes in the way we handle the basic maintenance and operations of our roads.
So one of those changes? Tolling. But that process has been bumpy, to say the least. And the toll projects are on hold for roughly 2 years, as we mentioned earlier, January 1st, 2026, thanks to the order from Governor Kotek. So lawmakers will have to think about making changes during the legislative session that's coming up, or we can basically lower our expectations for what ODOT can do. And by the way, this is not just an ODOT problem. The Portland Bureau of Transportation delivered a warning to City Council last month, saying it will need to cut $32 million in service and maintenance costs next year if the city cannot fill the growing budget hole left by the shrinking gas tax. Now that we know that ODOT and PBOT funding always seems to rile you up, so what do you think about all this? Send us your thoughts, will you? You can email us. The address is thestory@kgw.com, or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. Coming up next on The Story, we're going to answer a question that so many of you asked us. Why is my kicker refund coming back to me on my tax return next year instead of through a check in the mail? There's a reason for that, and while it may not be as convenient as a check, it actually helps ensure you get more money back. We'll explain all that when The Story returns. Now to a question that many of you have sent to us in recent weeks. With Oregon's record kicker announcement, you're wondering why you're going to get a kicker money in the form of a tax credit instead of a check in the mail like it used to be in the mid-2000s. Well, we're going to do a deep dive and give you that answer. And to better understand it all, let's take a look at how we got here. The Oregon legislature created the kicker law in 1979. It works like this. If taxes coming into the state total more than 2% of what economists predicted, so it's 2% higher, the surplus is sent back to taxpayers. The more money you pay in taxes, the more money you get back. Voters approved the kicker law twice, first in 1980 to sign off on the legislature's decision, and then again in 1999 when most of the law's language was put into the state constitution. Now, what you might not know is that the kicker started out as a tax credit, like it is now. But in 1995, the legislature passed a law to change the distribution from a tax credit into physical checks. People kind of liked that. It's like you see here in the video that we found in the KGW vault. These checks were still the method of getting money back to voters when the constitutional amendment passed in 1999, but the language of the Constitution did not make checks mandatory. It does allow the legislature to decide how to get the money back to taxpayers. So the distribution method changed in 2011 with House Bill 3543. That changed kicker distribution from those physical checks back to the tax credit option. Why'd they do that? Well, according to the legislative analysis of the bill, it's meant to save money, and that's a good thing for you. Administrative costs of getting the kicker back to taxpayers were deducted from the kicker itself. So sending the money to you electronically in the form of a tax credit, well, that saves about $650,000, which can be used to give you a bit more money. It's worth noting that lawmakers could change their mind and go back to those physical checks again, but that would take money out of your pocket. But likely not in time for this current kicker, a record $5.61 billion coming back to taxpayers. If you're wondering out how much your kicker rebate will be when you file taxes next year, there's a tool for that. Just find this story on the KGW website, then click the link that says check how much you'll get in your rebate. Now, for the first time in more than a decade, Washington County will have a new sheriff. Current Sheriff Pat Garrett is retiring, and a woman named Caprice Massey will take over December 1st. She's been with the department for 19 years. Today, our Blair Best sat down with Massey and asked her about issues that we've been talking about all this week, including her response to the homeless crisis and what she thinks about the new legislative committee in Salem that's meant to come up with solutions to the drug crisis.
On November 6th, they're hearing from law enforcement officers on what they see on the streets when it comes to open-air drug use. What is something that you think the state could help your officers on the ground with?
Well, I think right now, as it relates to that, just what you spoke to, they're doing what I need from the state to do. They're reviewing Measure 110, not to get rid of it entirely, but to figure out how it can be more effective. And I need that work to be ongoing. I need them to continue to listen to representatives from the law enforcement community, from Health and Human Services, from social organizations, to make sure that they are building something that is actually sustainable and will actually help.
Do you think law enforcement officers engaging with homeless people is the answer to handling a homeless crisis and a homeless situation?
I think it's an answer. I think it's critical that we are engaging with our houseless community in a way that is not criminal, in a way that shows compassion and empathy, and in a way that builds some trust so that people experiencing houselessness know that we are there to support them and help them as opposed to take them to jail.
Right, because I think right now they don't know that, right? They don't have that trust. How do you plan to rebuild that trust?
We're doing it. We're partnering with people who have that trust. Housing and Health and Human Services. I think the more they encounter deputies who give them a different experience, the more they will build that trust. I understand that it took a long time to deteriorate trust. We're not going to build it back overnight, but we are committed to it, day in and day out.
Interesting stuff. Still to come on the story. Members of a group called the Voter Research Project have canvassed neighborhoods all over Washington state in the past few years, trying to uncover voter fraud. Tonight, the results of what they found and what they did not find when the story returns. The KGW Great Toy Drive is coming soon, and we need organizations to sign up and help collect toys for kids. Last year, we collected 35,000. And we'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to have your help so we can do a whole lot more. You can head to kgw.com/toy to learn more. We want to thank 808 Grinds in Beaverton for signing up already. Please join us. Head to kgw.com/toy. 2 years ago, folks who believed our election system is rigged with people who are not supposed to vote, well, they started looking for problems in Washington state. 2 years later, we know what they found. Not much. Here's Chris Engels.
Members of the Voter Research Project, VRP, canvassed neighborhoods in 2021, trying to verify that voters actually live at the addresses where they're registered as required by law to receive a ballot by mail. VRP told Thurston County elections officials at that time they were checking out 2,164 voters with suspicious registrations.
Our elections and our Constitution have been circumvented and subjugated.
I don't know if the word fraud is relevant. What is relevant is there are a lot of questions.
If people broke the law, we want them going to jail. That's where we're at.
In some counties, there's been big talk of election fraud. But Thurston County VRP has now taken an additional step. It filed the paperwork this year to trigger official county investigations.
Hi, Angela. I am Chris Engels from King 5. How are you?
Lacey resident Angela Donovan is a witness in one of those cases. She signed a sworn affidavit that her mother-in-law does not live at this home, even though it's her in-law's registered voting address.
I mean, I signed the thing saying she wasn't living here no more.
So that's how I got this affidavit.
This is the VRP volunteer who showed up earlier this year at Angela's house. Angela thought she was a county elections employee.
They looked like they were official enough, so I'm like, whatever, you know.
Based on Angela's affidavit, VRP filed this, a voter registration challenge.
If they think that the person is registered illegally or they no longer reside at their address, any citizen can bring a challenge for that voter.
Mary Hall, Thurston County Auditor, presided over several hearings this year to investigate challenges filed by VRP.
Voter registration challenge hearing is called to order.
In these sessions, Voter Research Project presents evidence from public record searches, returned mail, and sworn witness statements to prove a violation.
This letter we sent out certified mail.
John Claybaugh is the Voter Research Project coordinator in Thurston County.
Our research indicates this is not where the voter resides.
Although Claybaugh was unable to reach Angela's mother-in-law, the county's investigator did. She spoke to her by phone the morning of this hearing in July.
She indicated to us that she is actually in California right now. She is tending to her 91-year-old father. She does say that she will be coming back to Thurston County.
Based on that, the auditor's office denied the voter registration challenge.
With all this review that's been going on, have you found a single vote where somebody has cast a vote illegally in your county?
We have not found any instance where somebody has voted illegally or there's something nefarious going on.
We're out looking and trying to help clean up the voter rolls in Washington state.
In other counties, a lack of evidence has not stopped claims of voter fraud in elections.
Skagit County, we had over 1,900 anomalies.
In August, Skagit County Republican Chair Bill Bruck attended a national gathering of election deniers. Bruck continues to peddle election misinformation.
Hello? Hi, Kitty.
Our investigation last year revealed that he falsely claimed ballots were cast in the names of dead people, for example.
It is a concern because I think what they're doing is undermining democracy.
For me, I'm not going to say fraud until I have, some actual proof.
John Claybaugh, the volunteer leading VRP's efforts in Thurston County, used to work as a welfare fraud investigator for Washington state.
Do you think that Donald Trump won the 2020 election?
I think there's ample evidence of irregularities in states like Arizona, Minnesota, Georgia.
John Claybaugh is submitting professional, detailed case summaries for each registration he challenges. Of 2,164 suspicious voters he identified in 2021, he's filed 28 registration challenges. Hearings on 9 of those cases so far have resulted in 5 challenges being sustained, but none involving people who actually voted illegally.
Is that worth all the effort?
Well, I would say We're just getting started. We have hundreds of cases that we're actively looking at right now.
We went to the Olympia address of one of Claybaugh's successful challenges, a green card holder, an ineligible non-citizen who was registered to vote.
There are non-citizens on our voter rolls. How are they getting there?
Isn't that a problem?
Yeah, it is a problem.
The auditor says the college student was already on the elections department's radar and was likely registered unknowingly through the state's motor voter program.
And a person can become mistakenly registered to vote. However, we've never found instances of these people actually voting.
What I'm really trying to do is identify where the gaps are, and because there are things that seem to be slipping through the cracks.
Those kinds of cases feed the belief that elections can't be trusted, a view Angela shares, and one that led her to turn in her own mother-in-law.
So I just don't really think one vote really makes a big difference.
Very interesting. I know you're wondering, and yes, Oregon does have a similar form. It's this one. You can use it to challenge someone's voter registration with it. You can find it at the Secretary of State's website. Hey, as we're starting to wrap things up, I want to talk to you about our show for next week. We're going to be featuring some of KGW's new investigative documentary. It's called Sick Medicine. It explores a system that allows doctors with serious disciplinary issues to continue to practice medicine, often in other states, with many patients having no clue about their doctor's past. You can watch the trailer right now on the KGW YouTube channel and expect in-depth stories and discussions next week right here on The Story. In the meantime, that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. And remember, The Story, our collective story, that never ends. Straight Talk with Laurel Porter's coming up next with a discussion on the new I-5 bridge. Enjoy your weekend. I'll see you right back here on Monday night.